Welcome to a brand new episode of the Marketing, Business and Wealth podcast. Today, we have an incredible guest, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. Olympian, Commonwealth Games gold medalist at two different Commonwealth Games, a silver medalist in the individual event, now a businessman, done incredible things in his life. Sean Wroe, welcome to the Marketing, Business and Wealth podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Mate, what is going on in your world right now? You've had a massive start to life and achieved so much. What are you doing with these days after the athletics career?
Yeah, so throughout my 20s, I was a professional athlete and I did that, pretty religiously, transitioned out of sport. And then currently at the moment, I'm now 5 years into owning and running my own mortgage brokering business. As of next year, it'll be 6 years. So, just, plodding along day by day, growing the business and kind of doing that angle.
Amazing, mate. So you're a pro athlete, and very few people can hang their hat on that accomplishment in itself. At some point, you're out there, you're running, and you realize you're really good. So if we rewind back to the start of your journey, when did you realize, hey, I'm pretty quick here. I can actually go somewhere with athletics?
Yeah, so that one's a little bit of a strange one because, I've always been the kid that's been like loved sport. I was at a primary school where my PE teacher introduced me to sports, and she introduced me to every kind of possible sport. So I was the kid at lunchtime or playtime, was always playing some kind of sport, but being a Melbourne kid, it was predominantly AFL and footy based. And then at some point, tried out for the athletics team, realized I had, a bit of speed and kind of progressed and went to zones after the athletics carnival. And then each time I would get slightly better than the previous year and just kept improving. I probably didn't realize that I could have it. I guess when I was 15, there was probably a major turning point in my career in the sense that I was playing junior footy in the winter and I was doing athletics in the summer, two different sports, which was perfect. But I actually smothered a football, and a guy called Brett Liddell, who I can still remember to this day. I was in the forward flank of the opposition, so as our defending, our back flank, sorry. And he was on his left foot, which was his non-preferred side, and he was like one of those big blokes that hit puberty a lot earlier than us. And I stuck my arm out and smothered the football. And I was the ruckman at the time, and I kind of was like, "Oh man, this really hurt." Jogged back to the take the ball in, and looked down at my arm, which was still sore, and realized it was pretty much 90 degrees and was just hanging. So two compound fractures.
Whoa.
Collapsed to the ground. Waited for 45 minutes for an ambulance and got rushed to hospital. Now I was put into a cast. I had two plates put in, and the remainder of my footy season was out. But I had and I kind of look at the positive of this. I had a cast that was in a 90-degree angle. And one of those things one of the perfect things about having a 90-degree angle is you've got perfect running arms. So I just kind of transitioned, focused on a bit more of the running, realized that probably my body type wasn't suited to AFL because I probably need to bulk up a lot more than what I was. And then, just kind of focused and slowly just transitioned and just mainly focused on running from about 15 onwards and kind of got progressively better and better again.
Unbelievable, mate. So it was almost like one of those sliding doors moments, and not a great experience, I'm sure, when you went through it, but laid the foundations for some pretty insane next chapters in your life, Olympics, and as we mentioned, medals at Commonwealth Games, world meets, and that thing. So anyone that's stepped onto the athletics track, dived into a pool at a reasonably competitive level, has probably had that dream of the Olympics, or it's been on their radar. Tell me about your mindset. When does that become a goal, and how do you think to actually bring that into reality? Because it takes a very special mindset to get to that level. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think for me, the first, like it was one of my things was I always just kept getting to the next level and I'd bomb out at that next level and then just kind of keep improving. I think a significant thing that happened in my junior athletics career was I got the opportunity to compete at World Juniors. I was at the top age of that age bracket, so it World Juniors is technically under 20s. And when I competed, I think I turned 18 or was about to turn 19. So I was at the top age of that bracket. I was busy in VCE trying to get myself ready for World Juniors because it was the following summer. Got there. Oh, no, it was the following year. So I got selected in our Australian summer and then went over to Italy for the World Junior Championships for the 400 and ended up getting sixth, I think, or sixth or seventh in the 400 meters. And our 4x4 did something similar in that event. And I think that at that point, I realized, okay, I'm a decent junior. I might be able to do this kind of senior thing. Let's have a go and see where it kind of takes me and realize that, you know, from juniors to seniors, it's probably not too much of a jump, but it is a significant jump and realize that, yeah, there was an opportunity to, uh, go through the senior rank and hopefully prove myself.
Mate, the 400 meters is to sprint that distance. If anyone has genuinely tried that, it is physically very, very hard. One of the hardest athletic events, in my opinion. It's probably the furthest that you basically go full out sprinting. How does that distance become your pet event?
Yeah, I mean, as a junior, I was always doing the 100 or 200, and then as kind of crept up to the 400s just by doing. I mean, when you go away and represent Victoria, generally for a 4x4, they need to fill in numbers, and so you're in the 4x1 already, so they just might go, "Hey, Sean, can you step up and run the 400?" So it just kind of came to me just by chance, and I had no idea how to run them. Um, and I was also in a very similar age bracket as Usain Bolt. So, you know, you would catch wind of this amazing athlete dropping such ridiculous times. And I think I got to a point where I realized that my 100 and 200 meter times were going to get to a particular level. But that wasn't the level that was going to be necessary to, you know, get to the Olympics or even compete at like such an elite level. So I think naturally I just ended up at the four because a 400 is one of those events that you can have natural talent or raw talent, but you actually need to put in the work. Right? You need to work at the 400, whereas the 100 and 200, you can just rely on talent and obviously do some work, but mainly the most talented guys can definitely get away with it. Whereas the 400, you definitely need to have to put the work in.
Mate, I can only imagine what that looks like, which is a great segue into what does that look like? You're a professional athlete, so every day you're getting up, you're training. What is leading into, say, a major event or major preparation period? What does a typical day look like for a professional athlete?
Yeah, so depending on when we are in the cycle, I would say general prep phase, which is the phase when you kind of start getting your body ready and training and putting a lot of volume into it. That's probably the most amount of training you'll do. And so my week was scheduled Monday to Saturday. We'll have Sundays off, and in the Monday to Saturday, most days there would be double sessions, whether it be a track and a gym or double track. So at that stage, you're probably doing up to 10 sessions a week, or yeah, maybe 10 or 11 sessions a week, depending on the structure. But as you kind of start getting ready for the season, you'll start to taper, and the sessions won't be about volume, but more quality sessions. So a lot more faster sessions, a lot more recovery. I mean, they're exhausting sessions because you have to go flat out, and when you go flat out, you get really, really tired, and you're lying on the ground for about 10 minutes trying to recover. So in that kind of sense, the volume will get less, like the amount of reps will get less, but they're just high quality sessions. And then it kind of tapers again all the way down to in season, you might be doing up to maybe 5 sessions or 4 or 5 sessions plus racing. So it really tapers all the way down.
Okay, that's a lot of sessions. What would a session look like just for the average person that hasn't had a lens into, if we're talking about on track, obviously gym's
Yeah.
completely different game. What might a session look like for a 400-meter professional?
Yeah, so a session would be, I mean, the warm up would take us probably about 45 minutes to an hour, where you jog, you do your dynamic stretching, you do your drills, you do your strides and like your tempo stuff. And the warm up was pretty similar for most sessions. Some sessions would be a bit more different in the warm up, but the warm up was pretty much the same. But then you kind of get into the bulk of the session. And the bulk of the session would probably be only about, 30 minutes or 45 minutes worth of actual work. But in that work, there's probably recovery as well, and depending on when it is in the season. So in general prep phase, the recoveries are low. So they might be 60 or 90 seconds or 3 minutes might be the max, but a slower pace, but you're just doing heaps of reps. And that would derive a 30-minute session. But then when you're at a specific prep phase, you might do 3 reps or 4 reps in the 30 to 40 minutes, and you might have 10 to 12 or 15 minutes recovery, but the reps are super fast and create a lot of lactic, and they're replicating very similar things that you feel in a race. And yeah, those are the kind of sessions we do. And then once that's done, you cool down and do the recovery side of things. So yeah, it can be anywhere between an hour and a half, depending on where you are in the training period.
Unbelievable. So every day you're pushing your body to the limits, so to speak, especially as someone that's in sprinting events, you're maxing out and it's exhausting, a lot of lactic build up. So mentally, how does that put, you're constantly out of your comfort zone and your body's screaming at you. What's that like mentally fronting up to that every day?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's crazy because I actually really enjoyed it. Like to me, having a session or having a hard session or knowing the session that you got ahead of you in the afternoon, I just kind of enjoyed it. Now, granted, I'm probably not the best trainer. Like I'm not one of those athletes that trained great. Like I did the work or broke down in the session, whatever. But when it came to competing, it was a different story. Like I loved racing. Like I'm like a natural competitor. So in that sense, it's very different. But yeah, I think the mindset side of things is, I think the goal was so big. I wanted to win the Olympic Games gold medal. Granted, I didn't do it, but you have to set a goal so big and so uncomfortable. And I think that's allowed me to get all the other little goals along the way. And that's the kind of mentality that I've kind of grabbed from my sporting career and just transferred it into business. So knowing the reason for why you're doing it makes it a lot easier to do the day to day and rocking up day to day and doing those mundane tasks, which is, for me, it was just running and training and doing all those things. Knowing that at some point you get to showcase whether you can perform or do that task really well, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does, mate. And to be on an Olympic team, just to get to the Olympics, as we mentioned, is a dream for a lot of people. Anyone that's probably stepped onto a sporting field at some stage for an Olympic based event. So to be in the top, 4 or 6, let's call it, in the country, when did that start happening? And the Olympics became very real for you. Like, I'm probably going to be going to an Olympics. What stage was that like crystal clear on the radar for you?
Yeah, I think the first point was making my first ever senior team, and for me that was in 2006. It was at the Melbourne Commonwealth Games. And my goal for that particular year, I just recently changed coaches, was to just go as a relay runner and maybe be the sixth relay runner or the fifth relay runner. I had an unbelievable season. That was probably my breakthrough season. I think I started the season at 46.8 seconds. And then I ended up the season running 45.35, which was the A qualifier for the individual event. Now, timing wise, I probably ran that a little bit earlier due to getting sick early and having to taper down. So my Commonwealth Games results wasn't that great, but I ended up being one of the individual runners at the Commonwealth Games and running the relay. So I think for me that was, and Commonwealth Games is, probably not as high as the Olympics, but it's a very strong caliber event because, there's Jamaica, there's Trinidad and Tobago, there's Kenya, there's all top athletic nations in the Commonwealth. The only country that is probably the United States. So if you're competing at that stage, the competitors are all the same. And that was probably when I realized, okay, Beijing Olympics is only 2 years away. I'm 21 at this Commonwealth Games. Progression, provided I don't get injured, should say that I would make the Beijing Olympics. And at that time, we came off the back end of Athens, and Athens, the relay boys actually won a silver. So I kind of came into the senior ranks with a very good history of 4x4 boys and 400 runners, with me and my other junior athletes like Joel Milburn and Ben Offrens coming through, being the young guns, in a really good time for 400-meter runners in Australia, because it just kind of catapulted from there, and we were kind of consistent and towards super competitive, I guess, in 400s.
Yeah, I actually remember that era as someone that's glued to any sort of Commonwealth Games, Olympics. I sit in front of the TV. And I think what's fascinating is if you're in the top 4 or 5 at, let's call it the main sports in Australia, AFL, cricket, rugby, basketball, you're on these really lucrative contracts. You've got endorsements, you've got sponsorship. You make a really good living out of your career. Although I know in the Olympic sense, if you look at our athletes there, it's not like that at all. You're in the top 4 or 5 in the country, even the top 1 or 2. What was that like? What's the economics of a professional athlete like from your experience?
Yeah, I can't. It is extremely difficult. I think what I'm grateful for is, I have got a really strong family unit, and I lived with my parents because I realized that, there's no point moving out, renting, and doing all those things when I need to go for 3 months of the year and, pay double rent and things like that. So I made a conscious effort of just staying at home. So I kind of stayed at home till I was 28, so that was a sacrifice that I had to make. But it resulted in being in a very good environment for me to do the thing which I was good at, which was running. So, I could just focus on running. There was a home cooked meal every night when I came home after training. So these are the kind of little things that I did. But yeah, it is challenging, like I think my coach said an interesting stat, and I think if you're the 1,000th best soccer player in the world, you can earn 6 figures, like 1,000. Right? So that's a big number. I ended up getting 13th in the world at World Champs in 2009. And I'm telling you right now, I wasn't earning 6 figures.
Yeah.
That's 13th in the world for 400. So, yeah, our sport sucks in the sense that, there's probably a handful of superstars that, get a lot of the money. Australia is really bad at kind of getting money for their athletes. I think it's probably changed now because of the whole social media scene. But that was only really just starting off when I was kind of getting towards the back end of the season. And I think now you could probably generate more income and create more opportunities for yourself with social media, which wasn't there when I was an athlete.
Yeah, so how did you monetize your profile, your skills? Because you've got coaches, you've got nutrition, you've got to
Yeah.
travel to all these places around the world. How do you monetize and make the most of your profile and where you're at that part of your journey?
Yeah, so there was a few things. So sponsorship's a big one.
Hmm.
So I was sponsored by ASICS, and they signed after Beijing. We locked into a 4-year contract, and there was a really small base contract with all of these bonuses.
Hmm.
So there were performance bonuses, medal bonuses, and all of that kind of stuff. We signed that contract during the global financial crisis in '08. So we thought, okay, it was pretty small, but we signed it, locked into that 4-year contract. So that kind of gave me a bit of a base. You'd also rely on Institute of Sports or government money that kind of comes your way with funding and things like that. So you rely on that for travel and all of that kind of stuff. I had another travel agency that was on my team for about 2 years, which was like super helpful. But that was all kind of derived off your own bat. And being an individual sport, I guess you kind of treated, I mean, being an athlete, marketing yourself, doing everything yourself, you're kind of running a small business. And kind of, I think all the tools that I've learned through my athletics career just really transferred quite comfortably once I was ready to pull the trigger and start my own business.
Yeah, it's a very similar transition. Of course, the high performance mindset is perfect for that. I guess shift when you make that move later in life. Let's talk about. I want to talk about this one. So you train all year round. So let's talk about an Olympics or a Commonwealth Games. So these are major meets. So your whole, yeah, that's the vision, that's the goal, that's on the radar up until every meet. Game day. I get nervous when I see any athlete at the blocks before they're going into a final or a major event. Talk about what that feels like as an athlete and knowing in the build up to being ready for game day and being on that big stage and knowing that yeah it all comes into that, let's call it 45 seconds. Talk to me about that.
Mm. Yeah, so for me, I think as you go up each level, that next level is always a bit more nerve-wracking and challenging and whatnot. So you do get experience like anything. So I remembered when I went as a junior, when I went to my first state championships at Olympic Park, and being really nervous because I was competing against the best state athletes. And then once I got selected to go to nationals, the nationals was the most nerve-wracking thing. But then you go down to states and you're like, nah, man, like this is not that bad because I've done nationals. And then from there you do an international competition, and the same thing kind of happens to a national level. You're like, oh, this isn't that bad. So as every time you level up, uh, it is nerve-wracking for the first time, but then you get experience, you understand what happens, and you manage your nerves, or you didn't manage your nerves, but you know that the next time you have that competition, it's probably not as bad. So that's what I found happened. And you get to the Olympics, and if I went to my second Olympics, I'm sure it would have been the same again. Like I would have been more comfortable to do the things that were necessary. But I think experience kind of plays into it. You kind of get experience, what it's all about. But when you're in the moment of being nervous and all of that kind of stuff, I don't know. I'm pretty chilled as an individual. Like I had a very set routine in terms of how I like to warm up, what I did, what I ate. Even when I ate, I guess I was probably a little bit kind of relaxed about that. But in terms of the warming up and things like that, I was very set in how I did things. I didn't listen to music. I just, was jovial, joking around. And so how I would approach my warm ups is from the beginning of like, catching the bus or getting to the track, warm up track, or, all of those things. Each layer or next stage, I'd start to focus a little bit more, and I start to get a bit more serious and kind of It's almost like I just funnel it all the way into this one moment where I'm in the blocks and I'm so focused and so in the moment. But at the beginning, like if you had to see me at the warm-up track kind of getting to that level, you would have been like, oh, he's kind of joking around, he's messing around, like he's not kind of serious. But that's kind of my process, bring it from a really big space and then really kind of narrow it in to that one moment where you have to deliver what you need to do.
Amazing, mate. That's a really good insight because I know every athlete would be different. There'd be some that would be really feeling the anxiety all the way up until the gun goes. There'd be some that are quite relaxed and have their little ritual. So it's really powerful to get that insight. Now, let's talk about Delhi because you get to the final of the 400 meters. And going into that, I'm sure you knew that you were a very good chance, as it proved to be with the finishing results. You're stepping up to the blocks. You get the silver medal, but only by a whisker. So heading into that final, did you know you were going to be right up the front? And then I'd love to hear what the feelings like to get silver, based on what you're feeling heading into that race and losing the gold. But if you go look at the race on YouTube, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So close. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so Delhi was a very interesting one, and I'd probably need to really rewind it back to our summer season. So our summer season, there was 6 of us that were very much capable of getting the 3 individual spots. So there's usually 3 individual spots. And that season, I was probably towards the top 3 out of the 6. And at Nationals, the Nationals was held in Perth, and I've never been able, and I'm still to this day can't figure out why I've never been able to perform that well at Perth. And I had been beating Joel probably all season, all the domestic Grand Prix meets. And at Nationals, he ran a really good race. I ran a really shit race, and he came third, and I came fourth, I think. So selectors decided to go with John Stephenson, Ben Offrens, and Joel Milburn as the top 3 runners. And I was like super devastated because Commonwealth was like a big major individual event that I wanted to tick off. I'd been the individual runner 4 years earlier. I actually did something similar 4 years earlier where I outpipped someone for the 3rd spot. So I was just like, oh, it's happening to me. So that season, after the summer season changed, like the whole season changed. So rather than going over to Europe and compete, make money, and do the European circuit, my coach and I sat down and said, okay, we're going to get ready for 2021 and we're going to stay in Australia and we're going to do a whole winter series because you just run a winter prep because you're only running a relay race and you're going to go over to Delhi with just winter legs and just race because you're a relay runner. Like it's not that important. So I was doing all winter prep, like heaps of volume, like really slow, hardly any speed work. But then John Stephenson decided probably about 6 weeks out that he's just withdrawing from the games and doesn't want to compete. Now I'm already listed as a team member. So Athletics Australia was like, cool, he's done the qualifying time. We're going to pop him in as an individual spot. So 6 weeks out, we had to pivot and start doing some speed work and race prep and kind of get myself ready for Commonwealth Games. And I went to Japan to have one meet, I went to Townsville to run the Oceania meet, ran 48 seconds, 47 seconds. Went to Japan, ran a 47 low, like still slow, like questioning my coach. And I'm like, mate, I don't think I'm going to be able to run fast. And like my tactic was very different in the sense that Commonwealth Games in that year was in October. So a lot of the competitors had done a whole European season. They had not much left in the tank. And whereas I've kind of done all this like strength training, but no speed work. So what I did for that series of running is went out super conservative and just relied on my strength to come home over the top of people. So in the heat, I ran like 46 seconds something. So I was like, okay, there's something here. We can do something. In the semi, I ran 45.8 and was like the second fastest for the competition. And then obviously for the final, if anyone gets a chance to look at it, I was a fair way back. And if you're into horse racing, I was a fair way back. And I remember that in that race, there was and I think a lot of the people thought I was going to get up, and there was a few punters that were saying, "Yeah, Sean's going to win it." I know friends back home were punting on me, and the tactic was really be patient, come home strong. And I remember there was a gap, what felt like a gap, where there was a Englishman, English Conrad Williams was on the outside. I think there was the Bahamas guy on my inside. And when I was coming home with 120 to go, I just kept saying to myself, there's that hole. You got to run through that hole, run through that hole. And then it was me and the Kenyan who was further on the inside of the Bahamas. And I could see him in my peripheral. And I was like, oh my God, that line better get to me really, really soon. And I tried to dip and I cooked the dip. And I think I dipped slightly earlier. And then we just kind of hit the tape. And it was just a photo finish, and I ended up coming second by 0.02. But I guess it would, I mean, it's a really long story, but for that Commonwealth Games championships, it was probably the most relaxed I'd been in the championships. Like there was no pressure on me because 6 weeks out, I wasn't even going to run the individual leg. And then now I've walked away with a silver and just missed out on the gold. Like it, like I couldn't have been any more grateful for that opportunity. And then I redeemed my 4 years earlier in the sense that I had won a gold at the Commonwealth Games for the 4x4, but I didn't run the final. I got dropped in the final and I went with the other team, but I still won a medal. But this time we got to run the final and I was the anchor leg and we won gold in that 4x4. So it was kind of really good redemption.
Tell me about that. So you get the baton, you're in front, you're
Yeah.
the anchor leg. How are you feeling in that moment when you're in front in the 4x400? Everyone's in the same lane so that they're not split out.
Yeah.
What's going on in your mind at that moment?
Oh, I just knew that it was game over. I said to the boys, I was like, give me the baton in front and we'll win this. But I said, just please give it to me in front because I didn't want it to be a mad tussle. So being a front runner, being in the front, you can dictate the pace. So I really kind of went out comfortably and still did the same strategy in the sense that I didn't have the speed to just go blistering and then hold on. So I really just kind of kept it within my means. And when in the 4x4, everyone kind of constantines and really catches me. And then what they try and do is try and pass you on a curve. Now, if you're in the inside lane and hugging the barrier, if you pass on a curve, you're running a further distance because of the stagger and whatnot to pass someone. So it's very difficult, or you need to be really fast to be able to pass someone on a curve. So I knew that if they were going to try and pass me on the curve, as long as I'm just kind of slightly ahead of them, it's going to be extremely difficult. And then with 120 to go, I was like, okay, see you boys, I'm going to put the jets on, and then pulled away. And you just see me kind of pull away again. So I felt very comfortable in it. At no stage throughout that 4x4 did I think that, did I think there was going to be an issue, just because the boys, we all did such a great job in terms of, leading the way.
And winning as a team, is that compared to the individual accomplishment, which was, a big surprise for you? How's the dynamics different with those two different outcomes and successes?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we were kind of going in fairly arrogant because we knew that 3 of us had made the individual final. And out of all the other countries, maybe 1 or 2 made the final. But we had 3 Australians in the final, which hadn't been done since like the 1970s. So we were like, okay, we've got the 3 top runners in the final for the 4x4. Surely we're going to win the 4x4. So I think, it's good winning as a team. It's we do an individual sport. We're very individually driven, but when you get together and provided that the team gels well, you can pull some magic out. And that trip, all of us were in the same rooms, same apartment complex. We had a funny scenario like having to clean our apartments because it was in Delhi and it was, very disheveled. So it was a very fun trip.
I can only imagine a couple of young lads, bit of success. Yeah, I can read between the lines there. So then you've got London on the horizon, and I know there was a series of events leading into that. Which brings me to the next question: like, what was the most challenging or the toughest experience or event that happened in your professional athletics career?
I mean, missing out on London was challenging because for me, in terms of my plan, I guess my 10-year plan, London was the one that was going to be the foundation to try and win the medal. Beijing was going to be great, get the experience, but London was the one to have a crack. My 4-year prep leading into London was very different to my 4-year prep leading into Beijing. And it's probably when I was in it, I probably didn't notice it. But when I come out and you've got time to reflect, I did notice that, it was very different. I probably wasn't doing the things that I did 4 years earlier because I was probably a bit more hungrier. It's another 4-year cycle. So you might be getting a little bit more complacent. You're just like, oh, I've been there, I've done it before. So things like that, like I probably wasn't dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And then leading into London, I got sick with appendicitis and then needed to try and prove my fitness to go as a relay runner, and then just couldn't do it in the time that was necessary. And so, I wasn't selected for the London Olympics. So that was extremely difficult. But look, it happens. I think that was probably challenging. And then from there, my coach said to me, we need to transition you out of sport. We're going to focus on getting a job and a career. And, athletics is going to be something you do on the side. And if you get on a few more trips, that's great. And I think once he did that, it changed again without me knowing it or at the time realizing that that's what was happening. And like anything in life, I think you need to focus on that particular thing and give it everything. Otherwise, you're going to do both things half-hearted.
Yeah, it's all absolutely the highest level at the highest end of the game. You can't be 90% in, can you? Got to be 101% in to get to that level. But on that note, what was the highlight? If you look back at an incredible career, what's the one thing that you're most proud of over that journey?
The travel, the camaraderie that I have with my training group, the friends, winning medals is great. But the mere fact that in my 20s I was the fittest and that I can potentially be, and I get paid to do that was pretty cool. But for me, I'm grateful that I picked a sport where I got to travel the world, meet incredible people, learned so many different cultures, and got paid to do that was pretty awesome.
Amazing, mate. And if there's a young, hungry athlete tuning into this episode with Olympic dreams, do you have any piece of advice or wisdom that you pass over to them?
I think set your goals and kind of believe that you can do it. My goals were ridiculously big. And you've got to be like that. I mean, as human beings, we are people that want to strive and do better and be better than what we previously used to be. And you need to set a goal that really challenges you and makes you feel uncomfortable. And I think the goal needs to make you feel uncomfortable because from your present moment of where you are and where you need to be, that journey is like the most important in any human being ever. Like the journey of getting yourself to where you need to be is so crucial. And that's the bit that you'll appreciate. And I think any aspiring Olympian or sports person or even big business person has got to realize that journey and that growth is super important.
Amazing, mate. And often when we see athletes transition away, they can battle with, they have this goal, the Olympic gold medal is such a strong residing goal. It's always there, it's always driving and pulling you. You step away from athletics, that goal is gone. Did you have any challenges with that transition, losing that goal and finding an identity after you finished up?
Yeah, 100%, man. And when you're in it, you don't realize you're in it, and yeah, it's challenging. So, I mean, my transition out of sport is I ended up on a graduate position for a company called Uniqlo. Now, I studied business Japanese at university. One of my goals was to work for a big Japanese company using my heritage and my background, and I thought that would be a kind of cool job. Traveled overseas, did that. Was still trying to do athletics at the time, but I was definitely not uh, as serious as what I was in previous years. I was enjoying myself. I was traveling, and I'm working, and I've got a new bunch of colleagues that I'm hanging out with. So I definitely look back now and just realize that I was just, I should have probably hung up the boots or the spikes. Did that for 18 months. Learned very quickly working for a big company and realizing that, with a Japanese company, I was going to always hit the ceiling, and there was always going to be some Japanese expat managers that were going to always be probably above me. And, I've for the throughout my 20s, I was an individual athlete, kind of running a small business in myself, and learned very quickly I needed to go back to that. So in that space of being unhappy with my job, not knowing, like not doing sport, partying, socializing, going out, doing all those crazy things. I was unhappy. I didn't know what to do, and it probably took 18 months of figuring out. So I just quit my job, got a car, started Ubering. I did 18 months of probably all these different short courses. I probably dropped 50 grand on courses and trying different things, Forex, you name it. I've probably tried it just to figure out what I like doing and what I am good at. And it wasn't until I sat down with a guy called Andrew Morello, who was the winner of The Apprentice when it first came out in Australia, and he was like an old underage club buddy of mine back in the day.
Nice.
And so I hit him up because I saw him at a seminar, and I was like, "Hey man, you're super successful. Can I take you out for lunch? And my shout. Just tell me where and when, and I'll take you out." And he's like, "Yeah, cool." And he sat me down, and he was working for Yellow Brick Roads, which is part of Mark Burris's franchise. And he drew out 4 quadrants. And I've still got the napkin that he wrote this on, and it just sits on my desk. And it basically said, it just talked about, like, if you're a business owner to raising capital, there's like 4 ways that you can raise money. First way, you go to the bank. Second way, you get a commercial loan or use your property or something like that. And then the fourth way is you become the bank and you invest into these business ventures. And that's what his mentor's done. And I was like, okay, well, what's this got to do with like work? And he goes, but the only way that he got there is he was a mortgage broker, and he had access to all of these clientels, and these clients will come to him for his advice as being a broker. And he was in a position to go, rather than going to me, I'm going to invest into this venture and I'll take some equity out of it, and like built his wealth that way. And that's what he does. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, look, man, you're good with numbers, you're charismatic. You should be a mortgage broker. And I was like, all right, cool, I'll give it a crack. What do I need to do? And he goes, you need to get your certificate 4 in mortgage brokering. And I was like, cool. And he goes, how long will it take you to do it? And I go, I'll get it done in a month. And I called him in a month and a day after. Like, it took me one more extra day or something. And I said, mate, I'm done. Can you get me a job? And so he opened up the doors in terms of brokering. Now, I didn't go down the yellow brick road route, and I went out on my own from the beginning, and that's probably another story in itself. But he kind of laid the foundation and was like, "This is what you need to be doing." And mortgage brokering, funnily enough, covers all the top five things in my personality that I don't know if you've done one of those like Strength Finder, Gallup like Strength Finder. So the top five things in my personality, it fulfills those needs, and I get absolutely like I froth over it. Like, to me, it's not work. I just get excited, crack on with the day.
Amazing, mate. And coming with that high performance mindset and transitioning straight into essentially a startup in the business world, was there parallels, and could you draw on, I guess, that mindset and things that you used to get so far in your athletics career, making that move into business?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, business and elite sports no different. I think, yeah, the only difference with business is there's probably a moment in your business career that there's no kind of performance or competition. Oh, there might be. I mean, there's always competition in business, but there's no like where you literally come to one area and you compete against one another to do one specific task to see who's the best, right? So in that sense, there's none of that. But the training side of it, like with training to get to that moment, that's your day to day, like waking up, doing your calls, doing your social media, doing your marketing. That's the everyday, the grind of it. That you like, I just rely on my training days and go, well, that's just another day in the bank. And funnily enough, my coach and I had this saying after a good session, we'll high five each other, and he goes, "Good session, another day of putting money in the bank account." And it's funny. I'm in finance now, so like, yeah, it's every day you put money in the bank account, and when you get to competition, that's when you need to withdraw all the money that you put into the bank account to compete, to make sure that you're good to go. And there are times where you're looking at your bank account and you're flat, you're zero, and you go into your minus, and you run like a really pathetic race, but you're still doing it because you're earning some money. But yeah, there's not. It's very similar in that sense. That like the day to day of it is very similar.
Amazing contrast, mate. And I've seen your socials. You're often sharing incredible client success stories and those elements. It's really fun, and I encourage everyone to follow Sakura. Am I pronouncing that right? Sakura?
Yeah. So Sakura Finance is
Sakura.
the company business. The Sakura is a cherry blossom, and I want your finances to blossom. Japan's like I'm Japanese, half Japanese, so that played on that kind of the word. And actually, the Japanese meaning when you break up Sakura is good and virtuous with the Chinese characters. So it just kind of had a bit of synergy. It also, I kind of play on it if you really struggle to say it. It's a weird way to say secure, maybe secure finance. But yeah, my socials for that platform is probably a little bit obsolete, but Wroe is where I'm at a lot of the time, and that's probably where I'm posting most of my content.
Yeah, it's fun to watch, and you've been getting into the reels and all those sorts of things. And what do you feel has made? Yeah, I'm going to say it wrong.
Sakura.
Sakura. I don't even know if I'm going to try to get Sakura Finance
Yeah.
successful over the 5 year journey that it's had to date.
What's made it successful? Well, the first goal, being a mortgage broker and being a new to industry mortgage broker, is within the first 2 years, more than 50% of brokers will leave the industry.
Wow.
And they drill that into you when you go to all the PD days and like all the business, the lender workshops and stuff like that. First 2 years, you're more than half's going to leave the industry. So my first goal as a broker was survive 2 years, and you've already beaten half your competition.
Wow.
And that was the first goal. Now, granted, it was hard to do, and I went into the red, and I was doing other odd jobs just to survive. But I knew that if I can get to year two, I'll beat half the competition. Now, probably at about year 3 and 4, There's probably a moment that it was like an aha moment that actually hit, and I'd stopped feeling like an imposter. And I was like, you know what? I'm a effing broker. And that when that moment hit, I was like, "You're cool. You can throw anything at me. I'll be able to figure out a solution for it." And it was probably about year 3 and 4, and that was just purely knowing the policies, knowing the lenders, understanding how to solve that problem. But yeah, for me now, I think now I know the brokering side of things and finding the solution. Now, as a business owner, I need to be a master seller and a master marketer. So a lot of my time now is learning marketing and learning how to sell, because the product is the brokering. That's my product, not the home loan. The product is me and being the broker, but I need to market and sell that for the rest of the world. So I'm spending a lot more time now in that space and being proficient at that to get to that next level, I guess.
Amazing. And you sort of touched on a little bit of it, I guess, already. But as a business owner, what has been the biggest challenge that you've had to face on that journey?
Cash flow is the hardest, man.
Mm.
You know, because cash flow is like you want to do things, right? Or you want to implement some software that's going to make your life a little bit more easier, or bring on a staff member and do all of that stuff. But cash flow is one of the hardest things, and to manage that is super challenging. And I'm still learning every day and like how to manage it a lot better.
Yeah,
And probably any small to medium sized business, they'll say cash flow, you know.
can relate, mate. So, and funnily enough, I think I may have shared parts of that in the last episode, and yeah, it definitely on the journey, especially if you're starting from scratch and square one to build that up. Yeah, people don't understand just how challenging and difficult that can be in business. So, thanks for sharing that. So, what would be the number one lesson that you have learned in business so far?
Just to show up, keep showing up every day and keep getting to the end of the day and say, what are some of the things that I did well? Consistently have that dialogue and conversation with yourself and say, what are some of the things I did well today? Cool, that was cool. That was cool. That wasn't so cool. Well, if that wasn't so cool, what can I change about it? And it's just that a little check-in point at the end of the day. I mean, quite often I'm writing usually every night. I write 3 wins for the day. Now, most of the time they're business related, but sometimes they're personal. And then first thing in the morning, I write a whole bunch of grateful stuff that I'm super grateful for. Stuff that I haven't even got yet. I still write why I'm so grateful for it, because I know that it's going to come to me at some point.
Love
But
that.
so that's the kind of mentality shift that I have with my day to day. But yeah, I think for me, the one thing is you need to keep kind of checking in with yourself, and if there's something that isn't working for you, figure out what it is, and why it's not working for you, or get rid of it if it's not working for you, and be completely fine with getting rid of it. Like it's business is it's a moving beast. It's like you can't be it's you will have to be always growing and always learning and kind of doing those things to kind of get you to where you need to get to.
Has there been one resounding strategy that has helped progress the business that comes to mind so far?
Yeah, for me, it's to pick a niche. For me, was to really drill down and figure out what. Because I mean, being a mortgage broker, you can do everything. I could sit there and write a commercial deal. I can do a personal loan deal. I can do a mortgage. But within that mortgage, it could be a refinance, a purchase, investment property, whatever. But just really figure out your client and what niche you want to fall in. And for me, my niche is millennials, first home buyers now. And generally, 9 times out of 10, they're probably owner occupiers. But then I'm starting to get a little bit more rent investors. And then once you've got that, figure out where they live. Where are they spending most of their time with? So for me, it's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok now. Like, so spend a lot of your time there showing up, and then you'll find those people. It's kind of like fishing. You just go out there and try and find those people. And that's kind of one of my things is at the beginning, I was probably so hungry for that deal, and I probably had like deal breath every time I was like speaking to someone where I was like, come talk to me, I'll do it. Like it
Yeah.
just like that ooze, that commission breath that like, yeah, and was chasing like so many deals that I just probably should have just gone, you know what, that's not for me. It's like a reverse mortgage. I'm never going to do that until I get to that stage in my career. So yeah, and just if you come across a deal that is your deal, like a deal that you don't usually do, be brave enough to give it to someone else and go, look, that's not for me. I'm more than happy to pass it to this broker who's, yeah, gonna get you that deal.
Amazing. I'm not sure if you can hear a little bit of
Yeah.
whining in the background. That's my little apprentice, Henry. He's on your bed, buddy. On your bed. Loves knows when to tune into a podcast episode.
Perfect.
Awesome, mate. So yeah, you're also a property owner yourself. So yeah, you're in you're walking the walk in that regards. How do you see the market? There's a lot happening globally, nationally. How is that climate right now?
Yeah, I think the property market, I mean, in Australia, property's been a very good asset for most Australians. You hold on to a piece of property, hopefully within 10 years, it'll kind of double in price. It might be 10 to 15 years now. But the thing with the property, it's a long-term game. Like, I don't think you should be one to kind of time the property market. My old mentor said that, you double your property in a 10-year cycle, and usually there's a 18-month to 2-year period where that property has jumped significantly from where it sits. Obviously, it goes up and down and whatnot. So for me, understanding that, maybe that 2-year cycle was during COVID, like that COVID moment where like properties went nuts. But now with the rates increasing, property prices have started to decline in value a little bit. But if I kind of educate my first home buyers in the sense that, okay, if you were trying to buy property in COVID, which was the hardest time to buy property because you would get outbidded any day of the week. If you can service a loan right now is the best time to snap up a property because sellers have the property on the market for longer and they're willing to accept offers that you're going to present to them. So kind of getting that message out to the first home buyers is super crucial for me. Because a lot of the first home buyers, probably when interest rates were at 2%, got burnt because they would go to an open for inspection. And like there was people in lockdowns that hadn't seen a property that were buying properties that they hadn't seen, which
Yeah.
was crazy.
Yeah, and on that note, is now like with there's discounts out there as there's less demand for buying property. If someone's sitting there looking at all the conditions with interest rates, with inflation, the cost of living, and what's happening, is now a good time to sit down with someone like yourself in the industry that this is what they do day to day to have that conversation and actually look at the road ahead and get informed and actually build a plan and a pathway for what they want to do in that market.
Yeah, correct. I mean, the the biggest thing with property or being a first home buyer is the not knowing. So a lot of my strategy meetings is educating a first home buyer of how to borrow money, what the difference between a redraw and an offset is, when would you go principal and interest only, and so once they go through a strategy meeting with me, they feel a bit more, hopefully feel a bit more empowered and understand how to borrow money. But we will also sit down and go through the numbers and look at what, right now, what current or what you would pay on a property, and then kind of inflate it and go, okay, let's say if interest rates increase by 1.5% and the rate actually does jump up, do you feel comfortable making those monthly repayments and having those kind of conversations and tough conversations? And by having that conversation and educating that client, hopefully they will be empowered to make the next step or the decision to go, yep, we're good for it, or no, we're going to still hold tight. So it's crucial that rather than just sitting there and waiting and thinking that your situation's going to change by just scrolling realestate.com or listening to another podcast, sit down in front of a professional and figure out whether that's, whether you can actually do it. And if you can't do it, then at least you know what you need to change to get to where you need to get to.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. And we're getting to the pointy end of this amazing conversation, which I'm so grateful for. Has there been one piece of advice that has changed your life that you would want to pass on to the listeners today that have tuned in for this episode?
I guess one of my biggest pieces of advice is always be learning and get rid of your ego in the sense that don't think you know everything. And there's quite often where, as a broker, I think I know the answer. And then I get to a point when I learn something new about a particular scenario or situation or a lender policy. And rather than having ego up and not believing it and kind of being against it, like understanding that, oh, there are other ways to do things or learn things or kind of using that particular tool in a particular way. So always having that kind of mindset is super crucial for your growth as an individual. And you'll excel in whatever you apply yourself in. So, if you're wanting to be a good husband or wife, just relationships, everything, just being like willing to understand different perceptions and don't let ego get in your way.
Amazing advice, mate. And I definitely concur that if you're always learning, you're always growing as well. So if people are tuning in and they want to get in touch with you, mate, obviously you're readily accessible. You've got, can't pronounce it again, Sakura.
Sakura Finance, yes.
Sakura, that's my goal, to be able to pronounce that by the end of the year. So if they want to get in touch with you, have a conversation or follow you, what are the best routes to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, so I think Sakura Finance, I do have a really, a temporary website at the moment because I've been kind of reviewing that and trying to get that sorted. So you can kind of hit me up there. Alternatively, you can Google Sean Wroe, CANWROE, and you'll find me some information about me there. But if you hit me up on Instagram or Facebook, I'm probably the most receptive to it. And kind of get back to you.
I'm sure there'll be no shortage of people wanting to say g'day. And if you've listened this far to the episode, thank you for your time. Make sure you follow the show. If you've loved it, please leave a review for us so we can get more listeners. But mate, I just want to say how grateful I am for your time. I know you're busy and there'd be a lot of people vying for your attention. So mate, thanks again. And I'm really excited to see the rest of your journey unfold and building on an incredible amount of success that you've already established so far in your life. So thank you, mate.
Thanks, mate.